When PKI fails, it almost never starts with a single bad certificate or a clever hacker pressing one button. The visible outage or breach is just the tip of the iceberg. Under the surface, you usually find governance gaps, like unclear ownership of root keys or weak approval processes. You see misconfigurations, such as overly trusted CAs, broken revocation, or certificates with the wrong usage. And you often see a lack of monitoring, where no one is watching for unusual issuance, expired certs, or trust chain changes. Because PKI underpins browsers, APIs, VPNs, and devices, a small weakness in one CA can ripple through the entire global trust ecosystem. In this module, we'll use real incidents as blueprints, showing how design, operations, and oversight must work together, so these systemic failures don't repeat in your environment. PKI outages and breaches almost never happen in completely new ways. Most incidents fall into 4 recurring risk patterns. First, integrity risks. Something about the cryptography or the authority is compromised. That includes stolen keys, hacked CAs, or certificates issued to the wrong party. The data still flows, but you can't trust who signed it. Second, availability risks. The PKI itself goes dark or unstable. OCAS Pay or CRL services go down, automation breaks, or a CA outage stops new certificates from being issued. On paper, the system is secure, but in practice, it stops working. Third, trust model risks. The rules of who trusts whom are inconsistent. Different clients rely on different trust stores, revocation is enforced unevenly, and gaps appear where attackers can slip through. Finally, operational risks. Errors in day-to-day management. Certificates expire, key usages are misconfigured, or someone clicks the wrong button. These are process failures, not cryptographic ones. Keep these 4 patterns in mind. We'll keep coming back to them as we look at how PKI should be designed and operated. To see why PKI matters, it helps to look at what happens when it fails completely. DigiNotar was a government-trusted certificate authority. In 2011, its network was quietly compromised. For weeks, the attacker could issue fake certificates that browsers treated as fully trusted. The real disaster wasn't just the breach. It was the silent gap before detection. There were no effective internal controls, no monitoring of certificate issuance, and weak audit trails. The problem was finally spotted from the outside, when users noticed something strange with a major website certificate. By then, the damage was done, and the company never recovered. Remember this sequence: compromise, indescended rogue certificates, late external discovery, and loss of trust. The entire PKI ecosystem depends on closing that silent gap. The rest of this course is essentially about designing systems, so a DigiNotar-style collapse cannot happen to you. To understand why PKI needs strong design, it helps to see how a vault can still be breached. The attackers didn't begin by going straight for the CA systems. They started at the outer edge of the network, exploiting simple weaknesses like weak or reused passwords. Once inside, the bigger issue appeared. The network was mostly flat. There was little or no segmentation between low-value systems and the high-value PKI infrastructure. That flat design let the attackers move laterally, hopping from system to system until they reached the CA environment. When they got there, they uncovered more weaknesses. Outdated servers, poorly enforced HSM controls, and limited monitoring. So it was not only easy to reach the vault, it was also easy to operate inside it without being noticed. The lesson is that protecting PKI isn't just about strong cryptography. It requires strong access controls at the edge, segmented internal networks, hardened CA systems, and continuous visibility around the keys. your organization depends on. When a certificate authority goes rogue or gets compromised, the entire trust model of the internet is at risk. Attackers can generate valid-looking certificates for major domains and launch man-in-the-middle attacks that browsers can't easily detect. At that point, the only real defense is to cut that CA off completely. Browsers and operating systems push urgent updates, mark every certificate from that CA as untrusted, and effectively give the CA a death penalty. The impact is huge. Governments and enterprises are forced to migrate services at speed. Citizens lose access during the transition, and the CA itself often doesn't survive. Events like this are why PKI governance, audit, and rapid revocation mechanisms are not optional extras. They are core requirements for keeping global digital trust intact. DigiNota taught the security community a brutal lesson. When a certificate authority is compromised, it's not a local incident. It's a global systemic failure of trust. To prevent that, think in concentric defenses around the CA private key. At the core, the key must live in hardened environments. HSMS, strong access controls, strict operational procedures, and ideally air-gapped or tightly segmented networks. Around that core, you need a powerful detection layer, continuous monitoring, independent audits, and aggressive anomaly detection. So any misuse of the CA is spotted quickly, not months later. Beyond the CA itself, the broader ecosystem has to react fast. Revocation must be rapid and reliable, and browser and OS vendors must enforce strict baseline policies, so a misbehaving CA can be constrained or fully distrusted. The mindset shift after DigiNotar is simple but profound. Treat CA operations as critical infrastructure. Assume compromise is possible. And design technology, monitoring, and ecosystem rules, so any failure is contained and repaired before it cascades across the internet. Let's Encrypt change the web by proving that PKI can run at massive, fully automated scale. Using the ACME protocol, servers request and renew certificates with no humans in the loop. Because it's free and easy, adoption exploded to millions of domains. That model comes with a trade-off. To reduce risk, certificates are intentionally short-lived, around 90 days. Short lifetimes mean every certificate must be renewed on time. As a result, the entire ecosystem becomes dependent on the automation pipeline and the ACME API staying available. If that automation fails, or the service has a major outage, huge parts of the web can suddenly lose valid certificates. This is the fragility of scale. PKE works brilliantly when everything is healthy, but even a brief disruption in the renewal flow can translate into widespread downtime and broken trust for users. Automation in PKI is powerful, but it also concentrates risk. Think of certificate operations as a chain. Your infrastructure must be reachable. Validation must succeed. Renewals must trigger on time, and only then do your services stay up. If any link in that chain fails, the others can collapse behind it. An API glitch, DNS problem, or OCSP outage can stop validation. When validation fails, automated renewal fails. When renewal fails, certificates expire. And once certs expire, perfectly healthy applications suddenly look untrusted and go offline. We've seen this in the real world, such as the CAA bug that forced mass certificate replacement, and OCSP outages that broke production traffic. The lesson isn't don't automate. It's that automation needs redundancy, monitoring, and clear ownership, because a small PKI issue can quickly turn into a major availability incident. By this point, you've seen that PKI gives you trust, but it doesn't automatically give you resilience. The biggest weakness in many automated PKI setups is a single point of failure: one cloud CA, one OCSP responder, one issuance path. If that provider is slow, down, or compromised, your entire environment can stall, or even fail open. That's what blind trust in a single cloud service looks like. A resilient design assumes components will break and builds alternatives in advance. Use a multi-CA strategy so you can switch issuance quickly, or run internal and external CAs side by side. Add smart retry logic into your automation, so short outages don't become incidents. And for revocation, rely on techniques like OCSP stapling so clients aren't blocked waiting on a remote service. The mindset shift is straightforward. Don't just consume cloud PKI. Engineer for failure, test mass reissuance regularly, and make sure your business can survive a bad day for any single PKI component. The biggest PKI failures in enterprises rarely begin with attackers. They usually start with quiet, boring misconfigurations that slip into production and stay there for months. Consider 3 common patterns. First, expired leaf or intermediate certificates. The cryptography is fine, but the clock runs out, and suddenly critical services can't establish TLS. To users, it looks like an outage, not a security control doing its job. Second, incorrect key usages or EKUs. A certificate meant only for encryption gets used for authentication, or a server cert is reused as a client cert. The chain may validate, but your security assumptions are broken, and access controls become unreliable. Third, shadow PKI. Teams spin up their own mini-Ks, test routes, or hard-coded certificates just to get things working. Over time, no one owns them. No one monitors them, and they create invisible trust paths you never designed or audited. All of these typically come from negligence and pressure to move fast, not from malice. The takeaway: PKI design is only half the battle. Disciplined configuration management, visibility, and clear ownership are what keep these silent killers from taking your environment down. When a PKI chain fails, it's almost never the root that breaks first. Most outages come from the middle: an intermediate certificate that has expired, been revoked, or is simply missing from the server's configuration. Clients build trust step by step. They start from the leaf certificate, then walk up through one or more intermediates until they reach a root they already trust. If any link in that path is invalid or unavailable, the client stops. It doesn't matter that the server's leaf certificate is technically fine. Without a valid intermediate, there is no provable path back to a trusted root. Operationally, this shows up as sudden connection untrusted errors across browsers, VPNs, Wi-Fi, APIs, and more. Because one intermediate often signs thousands or millions of leaf certificates, a single mistake can cause a broad, simultaneous outage. The key takeaway: managing the health, expiry, and distribution of intermediates is just as critical as managing roots and leaf certificates. Certificates don't just need to be valid. They need to be used in the right context. Every certificate encodes its intended purpose through key usage and extended key usage fields. One certificate might be meant only for securing a web server. Another might be only for code signing. If you try to use a server auth certificate to sign software, or a code signing certificate for TLS, compliant clients must reject it. From the application's point of view, that isn't a mostly okay certificate. It's simply invalid for that operation. The same idea applies to trust stores. A certificate issued by an internal CA might be trusted on your corporate laptops, but completely unknown to a mobile device that doesn't have that CA installed. Nothing is wrong with the certificate itself, but from the mobile device's trust perspective, it's untrusted and should be treated as risky. The takeaway: PKI trust is always contextual. Purpose and trust anchor must both match what the client expects. When either of those is wrong, a technically valid certificate becomes effectively invalid. The big idea here is that PKI outages are usually governance failures, not just technical glitches. You cannot secure what you cannot see. So everything starts with discovery. Use automated scanning to continuously find every certificate, key, and endpoint using them, across data centers, cloud, and shadow IT. Once you have visibility, you need a single source of truth: your inventory. Centralized tracking lets you answer basic questions instantly. What expires this week? Which keys are weak? And who owns each certificate? From there, move into monitoring. Tie that inventory into real-time alerts so expiring or misconfigured certificates are treated like any other production incident, not a surprise. Finally, bake governance into your delivery process with pre-deployment checks. Before anything goes live, verify that certificates, keys, and policies are correct. When this cycle keeps running, discover, inventory, monitor, and pre-check. You turn certificate outages from unexpected disasters into managed risks. By now, you've seen that PKI by itself is not enough. It has to be resilient. Think of that resilience resting on 3 pillars. The first pillar is security. This is about isolating and hardening your keys, typically with HSMs or equivalent controls, strict access, monitoring, and change control. If an attacker can touch your private keys, nothing else matters. The second pillar is architecture. You deliberately design for failure, multiple CAs where needed, redundancy for OCSP and CRLs, backup paths for issuance and validation, and clear blast radius limits if something goes wrong. PKE should bend under stress, not break. The third pillar is hygiene. That's disciplined day-to-day operations, clean certificate inventories, automated renewal, timely revocation, regular audits, and tested recovery procedures. Most PKI outages come from weak hygiene, not exotic attacks. When these 3 pillars work together, you get PKI that supports zero trust principles and can survive mistakes, outages, and attacks without taking your business down.